Okay.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're so glad that you can take time out of your busy schedule to join us for another great webinar. I'm really pleased that today we have Dr. Diana Brecher, who's joining us to talk about Thrive at Home, coping during COVID. And this is a presentation that was produced in association with Dr. Dina Schaefer. And unfortunately, Dr. Schaefer is not able to join us today, but she certainly is here with us in spirit. So if we could move along, I will share with you a little bit about the Psychology Foundation of Canada. And before I get there, we've got some housekeeping. We are recording the webinar and we will be sending it along to you in the next few days. You can also access all of our webinars on our website. If you just go under professionals, you'll see a tab that says webinars, and all of our webinars are posted there. We've got a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we are absolutely encouraging all of your questions. So please load up your questions there. We will get to them towards the end of the presentation, and the presentation should be about 45 minutes. And so we'll have some time towards the end to answer your questions. Okay, and with the Psychology Foundation of Canada, we are an organization that has been around for about 45 years. Our vision is Canada where every child achieves their optimal mental health. And we do this through the use of psychological science. We ensure that key adult caregivers in a child's life are equipped with the tools and resources that can help to provide and to promote mental well-being in young people. We work with partners all across the country, and we are continually learning and growing. Just recently, with the outbreak of the pandemic, we have had to pivot pretty quickly, and so we've been able to provide these webinars to the community in addition to some of our online training that I'll speak to in a little bit. That's a bit about us. I guess I wanted to get a sense, and Dr. Brecher and I wanted to know who is joining us today. So if you wouldn't mind, we're going to share a poll with you. And we want to understand in what capacity are you joining us today? So we appreciate that a lot of people are taking our webinars as professional development. Some people are interested in learning a little bit more about how to support their families. So this will give us a chance to get a sense of in what capacity, what kind of hat are you wearing today with us? So thanks a lot for joining. And it looks like we've got a pretty full house with 220 participants so far. So that's really wonderful. Great. And okay, it looks like we've got a lot of professionals that work with children. For the majority of folks are joining us, 59%. So, and then a lot of crossover as far as both. So that's helpful for us to know. We just have one more poll. This is in recognition of, people who are joining us all across the country. So we wanted to get a sense of where are you joining us today from. So if you could please answer in our poll. We want to understand, whereabouts are you coming?
I'm having a little trouble getting to the second poll. Sorry.
No problem. You know what? I think I can also do it, Dr. Brecher.
Okay. Yeah. I can't seem to get to this. Oh, I got it. I remember now. Got it. Here we are. Where are you joining us from?
Where are you joining us from today? Okay. Okay, so yeah, if you wouldn't mind just putting this in, and in the meantime, I'll speak to Kids Have Stress Too in our Stress Lessons programs. These are programs where we have worked with psychologists to develop evidence-based tips and strategies for supporting young people in managing, first of all, recognizing and then managing their stress. We recognize that all of us are going to experience stress throughout our lives, and so these are programs that the adults can deliver to young people. And so we've been able to bring these to an online format. And if you're interested in learning more, please visit our website and you'll get some more information. So I think we'll just, we'll end our polling, and we've got a large number, whoopsies. Sorry about that. You know what, we'll close the polling. I think what ended up happening is that I closed it before you did, Dr. Brecher. So anyway, I saw that we had great representation. Maybe others saw that for a microsecond, but if you want to share in the chat where you're from, that's always nice too, to get a sense of who's joining us. So thank you very much. And now I wanted to turn it over to Dr. Brecher. So wanted to share with you that Dr. Diana Brecher is a clinical psychologist, and she's been working with the Ryerson Counseling Center since 1991. She's the clinical director from 1994 to 2011, and she's also the adjunct faculty in the Ryerson Psychology Department, teaching graduate level courses in CBT and clinical supervision. 4 years ago, Diana started the Thrive RU program, which deeply rooted in positive psychology and is dedicated to teaching resilience. Diana's long-term goal is to infuse Ryerson's programs, services, and curriculum with principles of resilience and flourishing, and to help facilitate a cultural change within the university. And I wanted to share with you that, as I had mentioned, Dr. Dina Kara Schaefer is also a member of this team, and she is the co-author of the Thriving in Action Resilience Intervention. Dr. Dina Kara Schaefer is the coordinator of student transitions and retention at Ryerson University, and she's the president of the Learning Specialists Association of Canada. Whether by immersion in nature, somatic programming, digital strategies, or arts-based provocations, Dina helps students learn how to learn, and to do so from an equity-guided, research-driven, health-promoting approach. Formerly a learning strategist with Ryerson's Disability Services Office and a skilled OCT teacher, Dina offers a holistic, empathic, and joy-based pedagogical stance. Dina is co-initiator of the Thriving in Action Resilience Intervention and oversees the Portage Paddling Program and Mood Routes, campus street strolling initiatives. Dina holds a doctorate in nature-based pedagogy and learning strategies, and is also a trained yoga teacher with the 200-hour certificate, restorative yoga teacher, 60-hour, mindfulness meditation teacher, published poet, the Grey Tote, Vehicle Press 2013, and a writer, public speaker, and a consultant on learning and well-being. And we're so pleased that Dr. Brecher can be with us today, and that Dr. Schaefer is able to contribute. So I will turn it over to you. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you, Mandy. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today and to share with you a program that Dina and I put together really a couple of weeks into the pandemic, when we realized that we were sitting on some pretty useful strategies that we wanted to share with people as they were finding themselves in isolation in this unprecedented situation. So I want to just start with a bit of a caveat that, you know, in all of this uncertain and out of control, given our given context, we're really posing the question, what can we do to bring more health and hope to our days, despite everything? So we offer this as not a rigid to-do or glib advice, but really just to support you both in uplifting and in grounding your days, to help you thrive even a little while at home. And it seems that for many of you, this is while at home, while you're working and supporting both family and people in your work worlds. So I want to talk a bit about the shape of our days and how challenging it can be that when there's no imposed external structure, what we need to do and can do to bring some kind of shape to our days, so it doesn't feel so much like Groundhog Day, where every day is exactly the same and they can't differentiate weekdays from weekends. So one strategy that people can use is using something called the urgent important matrix. So this goes well beyond a to-do list, but it's really trying to sort through what's important and urgent, and that usually floats to the top, and what's not important and non-urgent, like, you know, you have to do laundry, but it doesn't have to be now, and if it's later, it's okay. What's urgent but not important, that might be a text or an email that feels important because it just buzzed at you but isn't really important. And what is important but non-urgent, which is the long-term tasks. And if we start to allocate things into one of these four quadrants, what we find is that we're much better able to set priorities and to bring shape to our work days and our personal lives. And if you're finding that it's difficult to get started, and this is many of us are experiencing this, there's something that is called the 15-minute rule, which is very simply making a commitment to follow your plan, not your mood. So when you made the plan to do whatever it is, it made sense to you at the time. So trust that and commit to the first 15 minutes. And if it really isn't going well for you, you're free to walk away. But at least give it that first 15-minute commitment. And then a way to get your motivation back if you're feeling very unmotivated is to follow the plan, not your mood. And so if you combine the 15-minute rule with the follow your plan, not your mood, you can find yourself kind of getting around that feeling of, I have 1,000 things to do and I don't feel like doing any of them. So the other question is, how do you know you're done for the day? So for many of us, there's no real clear distinction of where we work and where we live right now. And so having a clear boundary about, I've accomplished these 3 things and now I'm done. Now I can take a lunch break. Now I can end my workday, whatever it is. It can be very helpful to have that set ahead of time, because otherwise you may find yourself wandering in, late in the evening or very early morning, starting your day way too soon and not having any kind of work-life balance. Next, I'd like to talk about social. So what would it mean to intentionally really give attention to the relationships in your life? Some of the relationships are going to be demanding that you attend to them. So if you're caregiving or living with people who need things from you, but what about those optional things? So I've put together a bit of a list here. Any of them and all of them can be very useful. I want to highlight 1 or 2. For example, gratitude or forgiveness e-letter writing is a strategy I'll be talking about in a little while, but it's this idea of, could you start your day with a text or an email of gratitude towards someone, kind of setting the tone. Going for a walk or a run and having a talk with someone on the phone at the same time. So maintaining connection without the over Zoom fatigue. Having dinners with people, even through something like Zoom or movies. I'm sure many of you are doing a lot of these things, but it's easy to kind of let them slide, and then we experience all the distress of isolation, which is so stressful for us. So nourishing those relationships can make a big difference. And so you might even want to right now pull out your phone and send a text to someone of gratitude and appreciation. And then how does that eventually come back to you? That's one of the many ways that I'm going to be talking about today that we can increase our sense of well-being through intentional small activities that are within our control. Then we need to talk about space a bit. So how are you taking care of your environment? Now that we've been into this pandemic for a couple of months, I'm sure many of you have engaged in projects around the house, recycle things, letting go of things, decluttering. I know my partner cleaned out the whole basement pretty early on and got a great deal of satisfaction out of it. So how can you repurpose or declutter the space around you so that you're in control of your environment in that kind of way? That can also provide a sense of well-being when our environment feels clean and not cluttered. Another kind of suggestion that you might want to think about is something like surprise. Our lives are pretty constrained right now, so can you start something new and see where it takes you? So I have a colleague who decided she wanted to learn German, and she had more time than ever, and she lived alone. And so she was intentionally learning a new language. Is there something that's always called to you that you, within the limits of our lives today, can you find a way to engage in it? So it could be a language, it could be a craft, it could be baking. I have a friend who is set herself a task of learning a new recipe every night, and she's enjoying baking and cooking on a daily basis. Is it an art form, a musical instrument, having a physical practice, beginning to meditate regularly, going for regular walks, something that you always wanted to start doing that you haven't done? And what happens when we take on something new, this kind of um, uplifted mood? We tend to be much more focused. We may experience flow, which is kind of an optimal experience where our skills and challenges are just meeting each other. It's kind of that midpoint between boredom and anxiety where everything just kind of comes together. Learning new things can bring us into that once we start acquiring some skill. And so when we talk about flow, you may notice that anxiety and boredom are really at opposite ends, with flow smack in the middle. And then we have this comfort zone. So a comfort zone is when we have slightly more skill than the challenge is demanding. And so we can coast. And what happens is if we coast for too long, we kind of drop into boredom. But if we increase the challenge in our life, we move up to that kind of risk zone where there's growth and potentially flow. If the challenge is too high, we tend to feel really anxious. And so it's the idea that we're seesawing back and forth between anxiety and boredom, into flow, comfort zone, back to flow and comfort zone. And so I'd like to pose to you the question, have you had this experience recently or in your life where you ask yourself, where did the afternoon go? You were so engaged in what you were doing that time seems to stand still. Or it passes so quickly, you look up and say to yourself, where did the time go? That's likely, that's best described as a state of flow. It's often referred to in the sports arena as being in the zone. And so this is a kind of provocation or invitation for you to think about, can you engage in activities that bring you into the state of flow more often and on purpose, and being really intentional about it? Something that I think many of us are experiencing is too much sitting. So let's talk a little bit about exercise. So in a Journal of Research in Memory and Cognition, there's a wonderful article about the role of exercise breaks, what it enables students to do in university lectures is to increase their focus and attention and concentration by having these strategic breaks. And it can sometimes be very helpful to kind of go with the natural rhythm and body of the way our brain works and how our body operates, is that we typically have a period of about an hour where we can be very focused, and then we get kind of dreamier and a little spacier and hard to focus. So strategically putting in those exercise breaks in that half hour after that first hour of attention. Of course, in universities, it's a 3-hour lecture, which is really not designed for learning in that way. But planning breaks as a way of maintaining your endurance is a wonderful strategy. And this other article talks about how moving your body can sharpen your mind. And so when I'm teaching students in the university these concepts, I really encourage them to do the exercise as part of the learning strategy. So maybe it's studying for an hour and going out and exercising, or doing some stretches and coming back, rather than trying to just plow through without any end in sight. That is not a good strategy because we can't sustain attention indefinitely for hours at a time, or most people can't. And often when we're talking about younger children, exercise and movement becomes even more critical. And so I love this graphic. Dina found it. It's just so perfect. There are different ways to kind of engage in movement as a way of maintaining focus and attention. The first is to do a body scan. And a body scan is often uh, a mindfulness meditation strategy where you actually focus on your breathing at first, and then you send your attention to different parts of your body, usually starting at your feet, moving your full way up. There's a link in here if you want to listen to an audio recording of that. And it's a way of really getting in touch with what your body needs in a very non-judgmental way. So that's one way to think about getting feedback. Another is just to simply engage in active well-being. So not extreme sports, but something that a couple of times a week really gets your cardio going. It's all the things we know, but we're kind of stuck in the house right now. So depending on your living situation, you may or may not have the time or the ability to leave your home to do the exercise that normally you would do at the gym. So can you find the workarounds, but still maintain a good kind of level of fitness for what your body needs at this time? There are a lot of online exercise classes, and some people like to do those classes together with friends or other people with whom they live. All of those are so important to not give up on. And the kind of message is move, not too much, not too little, whatever works for you. So not going overboard, but kind of maintaining the level of fitness that you normally engage in. And if you were pretty sedentary before, maybe upping it a bit. I also want to talk about constructive rest. So constructive rest is the idea not kind of falling into a Netflix coma, which is one form of what feels like rest. But this is more intentionally putting your body in certain yoga type positions, which will really help bring your nervous system down into the parasympathetic nervous system, where your heart rate decreases a little bit, your breathing gets deeper. So this is called up the wall. And what's important to notice here is that the back of your head and your pelvis are both on the same surface, and then the legs go up the wall. And then if you do that for 3-minute increments, so 3 minutes would be the minimum amount of time, then if you stayed for 6 or for 9, there seems to be something that happens within the body within those 3 minutes that really helps all of the systems slow down a little bit. Another constructive rest pose from restorative yoga, it's kind of hard to tell from the pictures, but the knees are leaning on each other so that you're not having to put any effort in keeping your legs up in the air. And the idea is resting, not flopping down, but really holding yourself a little bit and just allowing your breathing to slow down enough so that it impacts your heart rate and your nervous system, and you can feel quite refreshed after doing this kind of pose. I'd like to talk about service, and the idea of service comes from some research in positive psychology. Sonia Lyubomirsky, who wrote a wonderful book, The How of Happiness, says, scientific research has provided evidence that practicing acts of kindness is not only good for the recipient, but it's also good for the doer. And so this is the idea that when we're being intentionally generous to others, it lends itself to us beginning to feel a sense of uplift and well-being. So that may not be the intent, but it is the result. So acts of kindness could be, again, within the constraints of our social isolation or social distancing, offer to help a neighbor at a distance, or smile at people when you're walking around, support healthcare providers. So certainly in my neighborhood and in many others, people step outside their houses at 7:30, bang their pots and pans, and it's a kind of acknowledgement to all of the healthcare providers and what they're doing for so many of us. One of the most powerful acts of kindness in the research is to do a kind deed and then don't tell anyone else about it. That seems to have the greatest impact of all of these, is that there's something about the anonymity that is very powerful. So think about, how did you help someone today? Or if it's really early for you, because I think some of you, it's still just morning, is how could you help someone today? Next, I'd like to talk about simplicity. This is a very simple breathing strategy. So let's say you're feeling pretty stressed out. What I'm going to encourage you to do, I'm just going to show it to you. Whoops, went ahead, didn't mean to. Sorry. Is breathe with the triangle. So as the triangle expands, inhale. As it shrinks down, exhale. And then inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. This video is for 1 minute, but there are other versions that go for 5 or for 10. So for folks who want that kind of guidance and don't tend to close your eyes when you do deep breathing, this is a very nice strategy that also I imagine young kids who need to kind of calm down, they may find this very reassuring as they breathe with the triangle and then exhale. I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is called box breathing. And so we're going to just wait for it to go around so we can get started, because it's inhale and exhale and hold. So right after this hold, I'm going to encourage you to inhale to the count of 4. And then exhale. Sorry, hold. And then exhale. And hold. And inhale and hold. And so again, this is another strategy. If you're finding yourself very scattered, needing to focus but being unable to bring it to mind, this could be a really nice transition or reset button that you engage in for maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes, not necessarily a long time. You may very well find yourself afterwards much better able to focus and concentrate. And so I also wanted to talk about kind of screen-free practices, which we spend too much time on screens right now. So one of the things you can do is what's called finger breathing. So spread your left hand wide and take the index finger of your right hand and start at the base of your left hand thumb, and then just trace up and down and up and down as you breathe in and out and in and out. And you can simply do this and then switch hands. So again, that's very grounding. It gives you something to focus on and to focus your breathing on. And it's about, again, settling the nervous system. Another strategy you can use is what we call feel your feet. So if you don't find focusing your breath very helpful, you can sit or stand, and without moving your feet, just feel the weight and the sensation or the pressure of being on the ground and the groundedness that comes from it. Often people sit with their legs crossed or one leg up on a stool or whatever. That may feel fine to the rest of the body, but it's not very grounding. So this is another way to kind of slow that down. The other thing you can do is do what we call the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So focus on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. So that's a way of getting into the present moment through your senses. And it, again, serves to narrow your focus if you're feeling really scattered, and then focus your attention on what's real and happening around you. I also want to talk about stillness. And so the idea of meditation or prayer or contemplation is something that can be very helpful during these times where there's not that much external stimulation, or if the stimulation is out there, it may not be really positive, like the constant news and statistics about COVID-19 and the people who are ill and on and so forth. How can we focus our attention differently in a way that's rejuvenating? And so we can, and what I've done here is brought in a list of really wonderful meditation teachers who can lead you on guided meditations and visualizations. These are hyperlinks, and so you can go right into them. They're very simple. And for anyone who is just beginning meditation, for example, Tara Brach has some suggestions about how to start to meditate, and it's absolutely worthwhile to listen to her podcasts and other people's meditations as well. Let's talk about single-mindedness. And so this really comes down to unitasking versus multitasking. You can see what seems to be moving on the screen are these batteries that are either filling up or being depleted. And for many of us who are trying to do multiple things simultaneously, so if you're trying to work and you have young children at home, or if you're trying to work on two separate things at the same time, or attend to cooking while you're managing a call, whatever it is, our brains are actually not designed to multitask. Really what we're doing is developing a skill of pivoting. So we're switching sets back and forth really quickly, but not efficiently. And it's very difficult to actually accomplish anything when we're trying to do two or more things at once. So this is a invitation to try to narrow your focus to one thing at a time, and then linking it back to the what we refer to as the dump and sift method of deciding is something urgent or important, or not urgent or not important. And so that's just kind of a thing to think about, is we don't multitask, we can't. I'd like to talk about sleep as well. So what's your body clock? Body clock is really the 24 hours in which we're either awake or asleep, and what are optimal times for us to sleep and to be awake. So this is a diagram that kind of gives you lots of information, you know, winding down times, optimal wake up and bedtime, and also near the top part of the clock, near 12 a.m. going down to 3 a.m., you'll see these kind of purple deep sleep blocks. And I want you to take note of them now, because I'm going to be talking about those in a moment. So how does a good night's sleep impact us? Most of people will say, well, I wake up feeling refreshed. But it impacts us in very specific ways. It increases our capacity to concentrate, to make good decisions, to be creative. It increases our social skills. We're much more likely to be comfortable in social situations if we are well rested. And it also has an impact on the physical markers of health. And in fact, it has an impact on our immune system, that we're much more likely to fight off any kind of illness if we are well rested. It also decreases things that we really don't want to see too much of. So moodiness, stress, anger, impulsivity. It even decreases our alcohol and nicotine use if we have been restored by a good night's sleep. I'll talk a little bit about the buffer zone. So many of us go through our days very focused and busy. And then try to just drop off to sleep without this buffer zone in as a transition period. So a buffer zone is an intentional slowing down by doing things that will help us transition to sleep. So think about it, instead of like having an on-off switch, this is like a dimmer switch in which we slowly move our way towards being unconscious. So I've listed a couple of things that are all screen free unless you're reading a Kindle or an ebook. And all of these have the positive benefit of being slow and therefore help you transition into sleep. I want to talk about savoring. Early on, we talked about the acts of kindness and we talked about gratitude. But here I'd like to talk about, what does it mean to stop and to savor the good things despite everything? So what does savor mean? It means to enjoy, appreciate, relish, delight. Are you intentionally giving some time to take in the beautiful things that are happening in your life? So for example, I walk every morning before the crowds are out, and I find myself savoring nature incredibly. So what are you doing intentionally that helps you to savor the good things? So here are just some suggestions. So one is called the 20-minute replay, which is to, you can do this alone or you can do this with someone else who is also there at the original time, is to go into an experience, to remember a time when, could be when you traveled or there was a special occasion, whatever, and spend 20 minutes really describing it and reliving the memories of it. It's about celebrating good news and give it the time and attention the good news deserves. It is also, if someone else is telling you about their good news, it's a wonderful thing to ask lots of questions to find out all the details of it. It's relishing ordinary experiences. So for me, going for a daily walk used to just be about the walking. And now it's about the nature and the quiet and spring coming in and all of those things. Reminiscing, it's kind of a version of the 20-minute replay with people in your life. So perhaps with a sibling, to remember an old childhood memory together and to recall it in its full detail. Or transporting yourself to your favorite place. So are you someone who likes nature or really bustling cities or travel that you've been on? And to imagine yourself in that place and to remember the good times. Maybe it's creating a photo album of what you're doing. I was talking to a friend the other day who said, I've created 4 photo albums since I was let go of work at the beginning of COVID. And it's been so joyous to go through all of these pictures of trips we've been on and so forth. Brother David Steindl-Rast is a monk who his focus is gratitude, and he writes about it. And in a podcast recently, I heard him say, the joy is the happiness that doesn't depend on what happens next. So take just a moment to think about that. It's the happiness that doesn't depend on what happens next. It's not about the events so much in our lives, but what we experience as we go through events. So I want to tell you a little bit about something that you may already be familiar with. It's called the 3 Good Things exercise. But we're doing a bit of a spin on it. So the 3 Good Things exercise is based on research done by Martin Seligman, who's considered the father of positive psychology. In the research, he asked people to think about 3 good things that happened that day, what role these things had, what role they played in making these good things happen, and what's the impact on their future or in their lives generally because this good thing occurred. And there were 6 conditions in this research study, and this condition, the 3 good things, seemed to have the strongest impact on well-being out of the 6, with playing to your character strengths being very close in terms of the top of the the six with the three good things exercise. They were looking at the impact of certain positive psychology interventions for people who were experiencing clinical depression at the time. And what they found was doing these exercises for 1 week had an impact for up to 6 months on well-being, scores of well-being, and a reduction in symptoms of depression. So the three good things despite is, can you think about three good things that have happened today or that happened yesterday, if it's early or morning today? Despite everything, what were these good things? And what role did you play in making them happen? And what does it say about your future? Sometimes people do this just before they go to bed, and it tends to lead to better dreams at night. Sometimes people choose to do this with their families, even with their young children, and they find that the kids really engage in it, and it kind of changes the tone at dinner when you talk about three good things rather than just unpacking the day more generally. And so this is an invitation to think about, no matter what's going wrong, what's also going right. So I also want to talk a bit about nature and us in nature. And we are, I think, programmed to connect to nature, and we tend to benefit from it when it's particularly beautiful, like these grasses moving in the wind. So this is an invitation to close your eyes for a moment and bring to mind a place in nature that has always brought you comfort, connection, solace, or a sense of refocus. Do you have a spot that you'd like to sit in, a special tree, favorite view? Bring it to mind in full and vivid detail. What does it feel like to conjure and re-experience your special nature place? I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about self-compassionate self-care. If there was ever a time for us to be self-compassionate, it's now. Nothing is exactly the way we set out. A friend of mine recently said, we're not just working from home, we are living through a pandemic and trying to manage work from home, family, and multiple other challenges. So engaging in self-compassion is the beginning of self-care. So one access point to self-compassion is asking yourself, what do I need? And by listening to what we need and want, we can build self-awareness. And so that's really the first step. And the second step is, am I willing to give it to myself? So are you going to demonstrate that you're deserving of self-care to yourself? Or do you deny yourself and say, no, everyone else comes first, my stuff comes later? And then ultimately, and this is really based on the work of Christian Neff, who is a psychologist at the University of Austin, Texas. Her field of research is self-compassion, and she talks about it as being your own best friend, treating yourself with the kindness and generosity of spirit that you would a dear friend, and give yourself the care you're longing for. And so these are kind of provocation questions for you to consider. This is a video that you can watch later that I think is beautiful. It's about how to be a friend to yourself. I wanted to include it in the slides, but given our time, we won't have time to watch it now. Oops.
Trying to be a better.
It decided it was time to watch it, but we're going to pass on. And the question to ask yourself, who wouldn't want to be their own best friend? So if you think about how kind of to see yourself from the eyes of the people who consider you their closest friend, the vision they have of you, the understanding they have of you, can you redirect that to yourself in the moment you need it the most? That is, I believe, a key component to resilience and to bouncing back when things go wrong, is to show that kind of self-forgiveness and self-compassion. And we're just wrapping up in another 2-3 minutes to get to questions, but I want to talk a bit about soul search. Again, this is a beautiful video called Murmuration, and it's about inspiring awe through nature, which I think you would really enjoy watching. And then I wanted to briefly just kind of put up this slide about Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept, where if you look at the 4 outer circles, it's identifying what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And through that, you can then identify your passion, your mission, your profession, and your vocation. And it's a really interesting way of kind of thinking through what's really important to you. And then finally, the idea of having non-negotiables. What do you need to feel well, to feel healthy? And can you honor that? Is it more movement, more rest, deeper sleep, time outdoors, virtual time with friends, quiet time, more or less of certain foods, talk therapy? Identify your top health 5 non-negotiables and how they make you feel. What do you need every day to ensure that you have a chance at practicing these top 5 each day? So maybe it's going for a walk, and maybe it's doing meditation, and maybe it's a hot bubble bath, whatever it is. Identify it and make a commitment to yourself to try to bring it into your life on a daily basis. These are 2 lovely meditations. The Web of Life is about our connection to everyone in concentric circles, and Loving Kindness is what you would imagine. And these are recordings that we've done. And I also wanted to mention that Thriving in Action is a program that my colleague Dina and I created. This is the link, and and I will send you the password to it, because we've made it available to the public outside of Ryerson until December. And I will give that to Mandy at the end of the webinar today. And I'm happy to take any questions. I'm going to stop the share right now. And there are a lot of things in the chat, I see. 82.
Yeah, this has been a fantastic webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Brecher. I've just been monitoring the chat, and people are really appreciative and grateful for this webinar. There have been a lot of questions as far as sharing the slides afterwards, and is that something that you and Dean?
I'm happy to share the slides and access to Thriving in Action Online.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I've been on Thriving in Action Online, and it's incredible. There's so many great resources there. So I think people will be really happy to receive that. So we've got some questions. So I think I'll start. We have some questions related to the screen-free practices that you were sharing. Would you be able to talk about how we can balance being updated on the news and being informed about what's going on and not be overwhelmed and overconsumed by it?
That's a great question. I think you have to be incredibly selective. So you have to decide what time of day can you absorb the news. So I've decided, for example, last thing at night is a bad time for me. It upsets me too much. So you decide, let's say after lunch or noon or whatever works for you, I'm going to take in what's essential. And I also recommend selecting your news source. So there are many, many sources. Some of them are more alarmist than others. Some give you levels of details you don't necessarily want or need. So choose your source, stick to it, and then limit the rest. Anything essential you will find out from that one source.
Okay. Excellent. We have some questions related to sleep.
Yes.
My daughter and I struggle with sleep, and we've had a hard time falling asleep and sleeping deeply. We have a wind down period and a routine, but it is a struggle. Do you have any other suggestions or tips?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things. A lot of people struggle from either insomnia or difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. Colleen Carney is a psychologist actually at Ryerson and a sleep expert. And she has several excellent books written to the consumer. The one that I personally like the best is called Good Night Mind. And she has wonderful suggestions. One of the things you might be thinking about is nutrition. So are you eating certain foods at night that might be interfering with your sleep with sugar or caffeine? What time of day you're exercising. So it shouldn't be within about 2-3 hours before you want to go to bed. Is your room cool enough? So we tend to sleep much better in a cooler environment. There are lots and lots of tips. Also monitoring how sleep efficient you are, which is how much time you're spending in bed relative to how many hours you're sleeping. So it takes the average person half an hour to fall asleep. And if you're sleeping for 7 hours, you should spend no more than 7.5 hours in bed instead of hitting the snooze button, etc. So all of that sleep hygiene goes into it, and I would strongly encourage you to check out her book, Colleen Carney.
Okay, great, and we can share that with folks afterwards as well. Okay, and so just a few. I wanted to share that I thought that these were some wonderful strategies that I think that are that could resonate and be relevant to young people as well as adults. But I wonder, Dr. Brecher, if you have any particular ideas around how to apply some of these strategies with young people.
Well, I would say most of them would apply. I mean, you'd have to gear the language and the attention span to different age groups. The younger they are, you might want to simplify both. But they're all about well-being, and they're all about what we need. So children can engage in the 3 good things exercise even as young as 3 or 4. Children will need, and we give them time to exercise in between tasks, but then we take it away as they get older. There's interesting research to suggest that playtime, exercise time, gym, art, etc., add to the children's ability to learn the academic classes. And if we take that away, they don't learn anymore, even if they had more time in those academic classes. So I think they can apply across the board, modified to the appropriate age, language, and time.
Okay, great. So as far as thinking of the 3 good things, I loved this one. We've got a question as far as providing some clarity on why is it important to focus on the future, how it will affect the future. This person's asking more around why do we have to do this part?
The deepening questions.
The deepening question.
I think mostly it's because it helps us let the good things sink in a little deeper. Make it more meaningful. It gives us more to think about. So even if it's something as simple as someone holding a door for you when you're coming through with packages, it doesn't have a huge impact on your future, but maybe it helps you think about, I'm living in a society where people care about each other, even strangers. That's a good thing. So it's about giving you the task to think about the good thing from different dimensions, and that kind of thickens and deepens the experience. And the deeper it goes, the greater the impact on well-being generally.
Okay, thanks for that. We have a question as far as encouraging our family members to try some of these tips. In particular, if some of them are struggling, do you have some advice as far as introducing these tips to some of our family and friends who might be struggling?
Well, maybe it's about simply saying, I heard about this idea, maybe one at a time, maybe cherry picking what you think would resonate most for that family member and saying, let's try it together. Maybe it's the wall, legs up the wall, when someone's really agitated, saying, well, I learned this, let's try it together, see if it makes a difference. And so no judgment, no imposition. Not every single strategy I talked about today is going to be impactful for every single person. So there is a certain kind of matching. And so some of it's intuitive and some of it's trial by error. So just say, I heard about this, let's try it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Introducing it and
Yeah.
seeing what sticks. Okay. Another question about sleep. My daughter becomes more and more anxious as she lies in bed for sleep. She reports thinking about COVID and all the bad things that could happen to her. How do I support her?
Right. Well, you might want to revisit the transition time before sleep. What is she doing beforehand? And can you make it more pleasant and perhaps more in the body? So maybe some of the restorative poses that we did, or the breathing exercises. Maybe invite her to engage in 3 good things exercise when she's lying in bed and the light is still on. So many of us turn off the light and start to worry. It's like, oh, we waited all day and now we're going to worry now because we have nothing else we have to do. Worst thing possible. You don't want to associate bed with anything except for sleep in this kind of situation. So eating in bed, reading in bed, playing on your phone, whatever, bad idea. You want to have a simple association between sleep and bedtime. So if she's super anxious, maybe she should get up and do something else for a while, get bored, and then come back to bed. So it's often considered a bad idea if you can't fall asleep to stay in bed trying to force yourself. Go do something boring, like watch the Weather Channel, and then come back.
Right.
You're sleepy.
Okay, great. So just as far as thinking about the staying on a task. So I really resonated with the 15-minute rule. That's really I'm taking that away for sure. But we've got a question from Halima, who's asking how to focus on that one task. My challenge is that I think a lot about everything while focusing on a task. So maybe can you speak a little bit more to that?
Right. So our minds are a really busy place. I had a meditation teacher who once said, the mind is like a drunken monkey jumping from branch to branch, right? Like you have this thought and that thought and over here and over there, and it's exhausting. And so it may be that mindfulness meditation might be a helpful kind of hack for you, because it helps us focus just on our breath, and we get some practice selecting one thing we're going to think about. However, if you find, for example, you have too many things on your mind and you can't focus on the task at hand, take a moment, jot down in a list all the things that are crowding your mind at the moment. Put the list away and promise yourself you'll get back to it, and then focus on the task at hand if possible. It may be that you've been sitting too long and you need to move or take a break as well. That might be a factor. Or it may be that you don't have what you need to accomplish the task. So you might need support or more information or technology support or whatever. So think about what might be interfering with that focus.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Thank you. So I'm just looking at the time, and I think we have completed our questions. There have been just a lot of thank yous, and so I wanted to send a big thank you to you, Dr. Brecher, for sharing with us today. These have been just wonderful strategies, and I think I could listen to you all day. You've really got a calming way about you, so I feel really prepared to go into the rest of my day. So on behalf of the Psychology Foundation of Canada, I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to thank Dr. Schaefer as well for contributing to the presentation. We hope you'll join us again.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure, and all the best to all of you.
Thank you.
Take care.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.